Të nderuar zonja dhe zotëri, aktivistët çështjes kombëtare, veteranë, ishte burgosë politik, në emër të organizatës Shtëpia e Lirisë, Albert American Freedom House, kam nderin sot t'i dhurojmë çmimin e nderuar dy aktivistëve të shquar të çështjes kombëtare shqiptare, jo thjesht të Komunitetit Shqiptar Amerikan. Tashmë emri i zotit Gjodogardi dhe Shemrit Guardi është i njohur jo më në Komunitetin Shqiptar Amerikan, po thosë në gjithë trojë shqiptare, sepse vetë aktiviteti i tyre, vetë përkushtimi i tyre i ka bërë tashmë të njohur dhe ata janë pjesë e historisë kombëtare. Komi shqiptar nuk i ka munduar bijtë e vet të pushkës, të penës, të diplomacisë, të cilët në momentet më historike, më decisive, ka dhënë ndihmën e tyre dhe i kanë në historisë të rrjedhur në shërbim të kombit. Të kujtojmë këtë mballje konica, Mitat Frashërin, Fanolin, Jeri Fishtën, e shumë bitë të tjerë, pa të cilët sot ne nuk qim në Shqipëri dhe i përsot të lirë. Të gjithë jemi dëshimtar, mbas lutëzit botërore, jo thjesht të gjendjes së mjeruar të Shqipërisë, e cila u shkel nacizmi me sllave komuniste, po trojet shqiptare, të cilat vetëm në shtypen e dyfisht në atë të sistemit barbar komunist dhe atë sllave. Atëherë kur shqiptarët e Kosovës kishin nevojë për një rrezë shpresë, atëherë kur makina vrasje serbe, vendet që mundur të shkatronte kauzën kombëtare, shqiptarët, si në Amerikë, bashkë edhe në gjithë trojet e tyre etnike ku jetonin, kishin një birë të denjë, një birë të arborit, një stërnit të cëmëveur, zotin t'i Guardi. Veprimtaria e zotit t'i Guardi dhe zonjës t'i Guardi është për dekada. Përkushtimi i tyre i ka bërë ata pjesë të historisë tonë kombëtare. Kanë ekzistuar kombe me territor më të madh se ne, me popullat më të madhe se ne, por sot janë zhdukur. Vota shqiptare një ministra, kryeministra, të cilët sot nuk kanë as nishanin, por diplomatë të tillë, personalitet të tilla, të cilët i dhanë kombit shqiptar, si zoti dhe zonja t'i Guardi, janë pjesë e historisë tonë kombëtare. Në këtë rast, do t'i bëj thirrje klasës politike shqiptare, institucioneve përkatëse, historiografisë shqiptare, të kthejnë syt nga figurat tona kombëtare, të kthejnë syt nga njerëzit të cilët i hapën rrugën çështjes kombëtare shqiptare. Kosova 100 vjet ishte në nacizëm, sllavo komuniste dhe të shkjallur, dhe ishte merit e këtij buri që kemi këtu sot, i cili ndezi dritën jeshile dhe Kosova morën në konsiderat dhe sot jeton e lirë në trojët e vet etnike. Dhe unë personalisht kam nderin sot që në emër të Shtëpisë së Lirisë t'i dhuroj çmimin më prestigjë që ne kemi si organizat zonjës dhe zotit t'i Guardi për kontributin e tyre të çmuar në drejtim të çështjes tonë kombëtare. Mr. Guardi, I'm honored to represent you, the precious guys. We are proud of you. We are proud of you.
Shqiptari e bukura.
Dhe tani fjalën ka zoti Zerbalaj.
That's okay. Everybody can hear me. Ka herë së unë folje dhe pak të jashtë, kështu që në një Nikolaj. Faleminderit të dilumoni. Është t'i Guardi, shërë t'i Guardi, zoja zotni. Është nësi që jemi bashku këtu për ta nderuar një figurë që nuk ka nevojë me folë shumë për ta, se flet puna. Një shembull i thjeshtë, popullori joni që thonë nga një herë, ajo nusja thotë, mos u këshir punën, po këshirun punën. Ky edhe pse është i vogël, i shkurt, po ka një zonë të madh, një zonë të fortë, që bota e njeu për çështjen tonë. I'm not going to scare you that I'm going to talk about the history of the league for the past 25, 30 years, because then we'll be going to be sleeping here. But I'm going to jump fast, just a couple of, to make the record straight, to tell the history the way it is. Because someday, the historians, it's going to put the history in its place the way it is and the way it was. 1984, Joe Diaguardi was elected to the Congress, served for two terms. 1985, he lost a bid for the re-election, and then immediately, without hesitation, he formed the Albanian American Civic League.
1989.
1989. Correct. So now, the dates, I'm not going to stick to it because the people who's going to write the history, they're going to look into it and they're going to put the right dates and the right years and months. So that wouldn't matter to me now. What I want to make a couple of personal things that happened through this period of time, about 2 decades, 2.5, is that the League, which I will take an example just very recently. I happened to be in the lunch with the president of Kosovo on the Thursday, the 22nd of September. And I had the chance to talk to her directly and tell her that the new state of Kosovo, with my own old state of Albania, I think they have forgotten about us, diaspora. Haven't heard from anybody yet, from either state, to say one thing about diaspora which have done so much in the past century. At the beginning of the century, as we all know, I'm going to tell you the story, but I have to mention it. Vatra came with the Fanoli, Konica, and they were able to lobby then the president of Woodrow Wilson, and they were able to do the things that today Albania exists. At the end of the century, again, the situation came that something has to be done, because in 1980, 1981, the situation in Kosovo started steering for the worst. Milosevic took the what do you call that? Autonomy in Kosovo. Took the autonomy and closed the schools, closed the offices that were run by the Albanians. From that point on, it's becoming the history. And then somehow, someway, something, a miracle, I would say, came out of nowhere, this guy, and formed the Albanian American Civic League. At that point in time, Vatra was in existence, and we weren't able or capable to do what needed to be done. He did, as we all know here, probably I don't have to tell you, but because that I'm here now, I have to mention a couple of things. He did what had to do, and in 1990, he organized a hearing at the Congress of the United States. We brought the leadership of Kosovo, headed by Ibrahim Rugova, Julieta Pulej, Nurgel Qosja, and many others that I don't remember the names now. But at the same token, America, of course, it brought the other side. It brought the Serbs, headed by Dobrica Ćosić, Bishop Mitjo, which I don't remember his name exactly, but the bishop and 2-3 other priests. And we had the hearing and lasted all day long. At the end of the day, if we can compare it on percentage-wise, I think we won the day by somewhere 80–90% on our favor. The fact speaks for itself, because when Dobrica Ćosić went back in Belgrade, the news people asked him, how did it go in Washington, D.C.? He responded and said, we cannot do nothing in Washington, D.C. because Washington is already occupied by the Albanians. At the same time, Ibrahim Rugova goes back to Pristina. Same thing, the news people asked him, how did it go in Washington, D.C.? He said it went wonderful, we had a big success, and what Albanian American Civic League did, practically one state couldn't have done more. So these are the facts that they speak for itself, but taking the main fact, when we hear our worst enemy, Slobodan Milošević, when he appeared in the court in Hague, he said, when he when he talked to the judges, and he said, simply quoting him, the reason I'm here today is because of the Albanian American Civic League that exists in the United States, headed by a Congressman, Joseph Dioguardi. He came to Kosovo, uprooted my people, asked them they became separatist and irredentist and whatnot and so on and so forth. So as a president, what I'm going to do? I have to do what I have to do, so I have to put my people down and make sure that they don't do what it shouldn't do based on him. So these are the facts. And as I said these things to the president of Kosovo that day, the 22nd of September, she very graciously took my conversation with her and responded, yes, we are in debt to you, to the diaspora, for sure. And she proved it to me. And I would like to thank her here now, and all the people that are listening in this media. On the next day, on the Friday the 23rd, at the dinner that was held by the National Albanian Council, in her speech, he said, I would like to thank the Albanian American Civic League for the 20 years of hard work on behalf of the independence of Kosovo. And that was the first high official on either state to thank this guy, or for that matter, anybody, or for that matter, the guy, I don't remember his name, but he went around here in New York City through these streets and picked up soda cans. And with that soda cans, he went and sold them at the supermarkets. And he gathered $5,000 and donated to the UÇK. So he has to be thanked also, because he did everything he could. It's another point after I took and I wanted to bring it to her attention. And I asked the permission to say it, and I asked her, I said, it's a request, if it's possible. I said, because we here in the United States, as I myself, I'm all 40, 50 years here, I have integrated to the American way. I don't want to be assimilated, but I am already integrated here. I said, to you, I understand you have a government, you have all the structure of the government, the president, the prime minister, all these things, but I know something it's over your head. You have a veto right over your head. If they don't like it, no matter what you ask or do, they will veto. But, I said, if you think and you believe that it's something that does not fit us, just like they say, one size doesn't fit all, you should stand fast and say, no, that is not good for us. And I said, believe me, America will support you and will respect you much harder or much better than giving in without cause. What surprised me at the Albanian National Council dinner, after the president spoke, came Prime Minister Hashim Thaçi. I wish him all the best. But it, to me, surprised me, and don't take my word for it because it's taped, it can be seen on TV and everything. Not once, but at least several times. He has mentioned Kosovo. Why Kosovo? Why me? Why an Albanian? Kosovo is Kosova, not Kosovo. Nobody was forcing him to say that there. So these are things that we have not, or they have not acknowledged what diaspora have done. I don't want to go too far, but we as a league have stood fast. We have not embraced or supported any political party on either side, because we feel that we can stay on the sidelines, see what they do, we will praise the good things and we will criticize the bad things. And I'd like to quote one thing from a book from my hometown, The Prince of Rhapsody, Rhapsodisi Shqiptar. Shumë kosh e njeh Frok Hajia. Joe, I'm sorry, I'm going to read it in Albanian, but one of these days I translate it for you. But
I'm sure I'll understand a lot of it.
And it's short. And it says here, the guy, he says, pluralizmit ju ngriç kështjella, bash fort mirë si doli pjella. Dikush vrap, ju fut në gjinj, krijuan shpejt 30 parti. Këso partish nuk kisha pa, njona tjetën veç të shoh. Kush nervoz e kush me llafe, populli mriz ton ditën kafe. Now, who's doing right, who's doing wrong? Just like I said, we would like to be independent, see and appraise the good ones and good things, and we will criticize the bad things and what it's not right for us. The work for us has never stopped. We have been betrayed by a lot of people. If I have to go and discuss the details of how we have been betrayed, It's going to take too long. But someday the historians and people will write and talk about it. So I'll leave you with that, and we'll meet again.
Thank you.
Tani fjane ka Zoti Mustafa Qepa.
Honorable laureates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Albanian American Freedom House, I would like to thank you for coming to this year's Freedom Eagle Prize ceremony. I would especially like to thank the laureates for coming to this ceremony, whose intent is to honor them and their contribution to the Albanian national cause. The presenting of this first prize of our organization has attracted very good sympathy in Albanian community. And one can ask, what causes this attention? After all, prizes have been existed for a long time among Albanian organizations. What makes the new Freedom Eagle Prize award so interesting, even though it will be awarded in a peripheral hall by a small organization, is that it is seen as the first genuine Albanian prize in patriotic field. The heart of the Freedom Eagle Prize Award, the will of Albanian patriots, echoes both the interest and the philosophical value system molded by our heroic people in the struggle for freedom. But what is utterly essential and important to this prize today is that the most worthy are receiving the prize. In this way, it sends a strong signal in opposition to the increasing militantism of the pseudo-patriotism, phenomenon that has led to the distortion of truth. The goal of the Albanian American Freedom House organization was to select those individuals who have made greatest contribution to Albanian national cause. The laureates of 2011 are very much in keeping with this trend. The prize rewards their contribution that have led to a new reality for the Albanian people. To put it briefly, one important lesson that can thus be derived from this modest ceremony: today we honor Joseph J. Diogwani, Shirley Clois Diogwani, two great personalities of Albanian movement that for many years have committed themselves to the triumph of the Albanian national cause. And to inspire hope for the future, all Albanians will live together in peace, prosperity, and freedom. Thank you very much. You deserve it. Thank you. Now, Shirley, Joe, your turn here.
Okay, I'm going to let Shirley go first. Okay? The American because she's going to blame me for taking her speech, so I said, you better go first. Whatever you say, I'm not going to say.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here tonight, and thank you for coming. When I think about this award, and I want to thank Muchi Jepa and Pelham Lamai, who are the founders of this organization, and it was their idea to do this, and I believe Zeph is on the board as well. It's a great reflection about the work that has been done historically, and I want to say something about that, but I also want to open it up, both my comments and our discussion, to where we're going in the future. And actually, Joe, you don't have to worry too much about what I'm going to say, or one of us stealing the other's comments. We always joke about this, too much overlap, because it was Muchi Jepa who decided what we were supposed to talk about tonight. And in my case, he asked me to talk about communism in Albania. Interestingly, I've spent, the last several weeks speaking and writing, both with Congress and elsewhere, about the crisis in Kosovo for very, very good reason. We all know that everything is now on the edge in the north, and we're facing a very, very potentially terrible time ahead if we don't prevent the partition of the north. We're all going to need to be focused on it. And it's actually because of that for years we've had to spend less time on what was happening in Albania. And I want to go back now to where it all began, at least for me, when I became a member of the Albanian American Civic League. And I am going to have to use my notes on this because there are some things that I want to basically cite from the past that I think are important. The very first time that I testified before the U.S. House of Representatives, and some of you were there, it was July 1996. It was before the Committee on International Relations. At that time, as you recall, our very good former Congressman Ben Gilman was chairman of the committee. At that time, the late and wonderful Tom Lantos was the ranking member. And I welcomed the opportunity to speak on behalf of Albania because it had endured the most brutally repressive communist regime in Europe, one only on a par, as we know, with Stalin's Soviet Union. And it had done so for 45 years after World War II. And because I had a quite substantial knowledge about the Nazi Holocaust, I wanted to be able to bear witness to the barbarous treatment that Albanians had suffered under Enver Hoxha, and also to applaud the transformation of a country that had virtually been a prison without walls for so many years and had transformed itself in a short period of time into an emerging democracy, actually within about 4 years and virtually with no bloodshed. I had visited Albania in 1995, and we should, by the way, stop and cite here a very important fact, and that is that Jody Aguardi and the late Congressman Lantos, as you know, were the first U.S. officials in 50 years to enter the country. They did that in 1990, and they need to be credited for starting the process of bringing the wall down. And I would say bringing the bunkers down. So in 1995, I had a wonderful opportunity to see the face of the new Albania. And so I wanted to be sure that the U.S. government did not do what it was actually being asked to do at that point, which was to push Albania back into years of isolation because of the irregularities that had occurred in the second election in May of '96. And for those of you who were there or have seen the video, you will recall that it was Nicholas Gage of the Panoperatic movement and other members of the Greek lobby that had come into horrible, consensus with the Albanian communists, and they had pushed for this hearing. In my testimony, I sought very much to draw attention to the obligation that the United States and Europe had to support post-communist Albania, since for 45 years the West had done almost nothing. It had hardly raised any outcry against the Hoxha regime. And I think we can all say the hearing was historic because we can rightfully say the Albanian American Civic League convinced the U.S. government not to place economic sanctions against Albania. That's what they were about to do. And to go to their European friends and make sure that Albania wasn't expelled from the Council of Europe. That was a very important moment. And so today, years later, 21 years in the making, it's very, very sad for me to reflect on the fact that Albania today is actually a democracy in name only. Of course, it's never returned to the Hoxha era, where we had, thousands of civilians tortured, imprisoned, executed, deemed enemies of the state. But nevertheless, and we all know this, and this is not, you know, an easy discussion, but I think we have to have it. Albania has been locked in a power struggle between the Democratic Party and the Socialist Party, and the people are being defeated. The West can certainly be criticized, and should be, for looking the other way, as Albania has done its bidding in the Balkans, and they've done that all, you know, certainly ever since the war in Kosovo. But in the end, it's the Albanian political elite that's responsible for massive corruption, lack of rule of law, lack of free press, and the economic impoverishment of the majority. The Democratic Party has always claimed the anti-communist label, and the diaspora has upheld that image. It's helped to uphold it. And for a long time, it deserved to have that. But in the last few years, it has become clear that both parties have enriched themselves, and the public outcry against corrupt elites finally came to a crescendo last January. You'll remember that, when the demonstration in Tirana turned violent, and there were 3 people dead, 39 wounded, and yes, to be sure, the Socialist Party's leader, actually, the leader, Edi Rama, was behind the demonstration. But we all need to realize that the crowd of 20,000 people came from all political parties. They wanted to protest the unpunished corruption of politicians and the ever-worsening economy. Now we see that Berisha and Rama are in a standoff. This year's elections, this past year, was full of irregularities. Albania's admission to the EU has been put on hold. Albanian citizens are in a siege mentality. Last February, as a result, I published an article about the situation in Balkan Insight. It was called Albanians Stand at a Perilous Crossroads. And I said, Albania is still run by former communist officials, that includes the DP, and that the patronage and control of both business and media sectors by both parties makes it very difficult for newcomers to enter into politics. I called for the end to the pattern of confrontational politics, void of principles and values, which has, in fact, thwarted unity and progress since the fall of communism. And I argued that it was very, very important that if the current officials were not going to change, that there had to be a new day, an opening, to allow a new generation to come into the political arena and really produce a productive future for all Albanians in Albania with the rest of Europe. And I also admonished the West in this article to stop trying to maintain stability at all costs, but instead to support the Albanian population's yearning for democracy and economic vitality. I'm sad to report that while many Albanians here and abroad wrote back to me or called me to praise this article, for the first time in 17 years of work, I received hate mail in huge amounts. And guess where that hate mail primarily came from? Primarily came from people in the diaspora. And all too many of them were from the Democratic Party, and I understood how they felt. But I also understood that, and by the way, these were not people who had been, you know, inside HOSH's jails. Nobody in that category was complaining. But I think that's something we have to realize, and it's sad, and we have to do something about that, and I'll get to that in a minute. Then in August, I don't know whether you all saw this, but Dimitar Bechev, he's the head of the Sofia office of the European Council on Foreign Relations, wrote this incredible article called The Protracted Death of Democratic Albania. He said in it, and I'm going to quote this, Berisha and Rama together have done more to destroy their country's project than any other post-communist leaders in Europe. And that Albania's people have endured hardship like no other in the communist bloc, with an entrepreneurial energy, nevertheless, that is often more American than European, and they deserve better. They deserve better than their vote-rigging leaders have offered. This is now coming from a Bulgarian. And Bechev called on Europe to take a different stance with Tirana than they had done until now, and I would say the United States should do the same. So, meanwhile, I think we in the diaspora have to take a more critical and nuanced stance, and we owe it to all those who suffered and died under communism in Albania. I have come to the conclusion in recent months, and many people have tried to dissuade me of this conclusion in the past, that the biggest mistake in post-communist Albania was that the criminals of the Hoxha era were never brought to trial. Number one. And two, that there was no Truth and Reconciliation Commission process ever engaged in so that the victims could tell their story. I think it's time for us to tell our story. He'll like the member to avoid.
Comments? Thank you, Peter. No, Mr. Lamai. Pelham. Pelham like the dove, right?
Yes.
Pigeon. Pigeons, yes. And thank you, Mucci. This is very nice because I think what you're hearing is a new platform for our league to now go back to Albania and figure out, while we worked very hard for the Albanians in Kosovo and in Southeast Montenegro and in Western Macedonia and in Southern Serbia, Preševa, we even snuck across the border one time, and we've been trying to work hard for Chamria, and that's gonna be the bulk of our conversation. It's important to tell the truth. You are Albanians. I have Albanian blood. The mother country of Albania is not totally well. Okay? You know that. It's not a true democracy. Political parties own the press. People with money buy other people. Too much money is going to too few people, and the Albanian people now are suffering, not as much as they did under Hoxha, but the reality today is not good. How could Romania get into the European Union before Albania? You tell me that. How could that be? What's the word in Albanian for shame? Tur? Yeah, it's a shame. Romania had the worst reputation, Ceausescu. How did we let this happen? Because we don't have good leadership in Albania. I went there many, many times. I remember 1990. It was my idea that if we were going to go to Kosovo, and I remember Congressman Lantos telling me, Joe, I see the Albanian people love you a lot. If there's an opportunity for you to take me to Albania, I've been all over the world. I was born in Hungary. I want to go there, and I'd love to be one of the first to go there. And I said, Congressman Lantos, it's funny you should say that, because I've gotten several invitations from the mission here on 79th Street. They wanted to honor me. But Albanian people are pretty smart, and they told me, you will not be honored by Ramiz Aliyah. You will be used. They will tape it, and they'll play what they want to play, and you'll be poisoned forever because people will say, oh, look, he supported the communist regime. So I never went. Okay? In fact, I remember when, after so many calls, they wanted to have a meeting with me, and they invited me to the mission, and because of certain Albanians who knew how the communists work, I'm born here. I know I didn't like communism, but I didn't know how clever they were. And they told me, if you ever go to that mission, you will be taken. So if you want to meet with the, who was he at that time? No, this is going back to 1990. I see him on the street now. He sees me. In fact, he's always, when he sees me, he says, oh, you could have been a millionaire if you cooperated with us. See, right away, the communists want to tell you how much money you lost by not working with them. And Bashkin Pataka. Bashkin Pataka. I see him now here. He must have moved from Albania to here. Maybe he's rich and he's coming back and forth. I don't know. But I remember telling him, you want to meet with me? You have to meet with me at my Italian club on 69th and 5th, not too far from where you are. And sure enough, someone told me he's not going to come alone. He's going to come because they don't trust each other. He's going to come with a secretary. And sure enough, while we're there, this guy is writing left and right to make sure that he's asking the right questions and everything I'm saying. But I told him at that time, because I had spoken to Tom Lantos, if you want me to come, I have to bring a congressman who's there today. I just left Congress with me. Oh no, we want to honor you. You're the one we want. Then I cannot go. Then, when I decided to go to Kosovo and they found out about it, we get calls again. You're going to Kosovo and you're not coming here? I said, well, I'm bringing Congressman Lantos to Kosovo. If you want us to both come, we will deal with that. It calls me back. You know, they don't do anything without checking with the Minister of Information or somebody else. All right, we want you to come. You can bring Lantos, but you have to come to Albania before you go to Kosovo. I says, no, it's too late. Someone told me, if you ever go to Albania, you make sure you go to Kosovo first, because they never stood up for Kosovo for 45 years. They never did, all right? And that's why I orchestrated it. Lantos would have gone either way. I said, no, we're going to go to Kosovo first. We're going to challenge Milosevic for what he's doing. Don't forget, this was 1990, and you mentioned 1981, 82. He wasn't there yet. He came in 1987. And guess where Milosevic was from 1980 to 85? Right here in Washington, Banka Lubanska. He was with Kissinger and Eagleburger. That's where he made all of his friends. That's why the State Department loved him. He wore his Italian suits. He was here in the United States. When he became president of the Communist Party in Serbia in 1987, that's when things got very bad for the Albanians. But they started in 1980-81 with when Tito died, the student riots. I'm giving you the history. You know it, but I want to repeat it. Then, so I say to myself, only God could have decided to make me a congressman at the time when Milosevic becomes in charge of Serbia and therefore Yugoslavia. Because we know if you're in charge of Serbia, you're in charge of Yugoslavia. This had to be divine providence, okay? And think about it. I was the accidental congressman. I was an accountant. No one ever thought I could get elected to Congress. I wasn't involved in parties. I was a registered Republican, but I wasn't involved. But I decided at the age of 44, after 22 years as an accountant, I wanted to do something different, something important, something meaningful with my life. And everybody said, you're crazy, you cannot win. My own party didn't want to give me the nomination, so I had to pick a Democratic district where no Republican wanted to run, where it was 3-1, Democrats to Republican. And they thought they got rid of me. I won by 1,000 votes out of 300,000. Because I worked hard, shum boom. All right? Now, did I know Albanians then? No. I only knew the AAFH friends of my father. It was and this will be in my book. I started to write the book. You're going to get the whole history with everything. And we have things that no one has seen yet. But in 1985, September 20th, my 45th birthday, my first fundraiser as a congressman, my Irish-American finance chairman, now dead, Bill Casson, brought his Albanian workers from Kosovo. He was an attorney who had a contracting firm, and these guys were painters. And by accident, they were standing next to my father, who was speaking AAFH Albanian to his sister. My father died only a year and a half later, so look how coincidental this is. And they came running up to me. How was your father speaking Albanian? We thought you were Italian-American. I said, well, yes, my parents were born in Italy. I'm Italian-American. But I know we have this subculture, and frankly, I don't know the whole story because my father only has a 4th grade education, and my grandmother too. I asked them for books, they never gave it to me, and I know it has something to do with the Turks and could even go back as far as Rome. No, you're from Kosovo. You're from Kosovo, you're AAFH. And every week they came to my house with books and memos to teach me the real history of the Albanian people. I got so inspired. From that day on, I made this my #1 project as a congressman. I didn't forget my people, what they needed in Westchester County, but I made that, and even after I left, I felt obligated to form that league in order to continue the good work we did, because it was a shock that I didn't get reelected, but, you know, politics is very dangerous, and they redistrict you, they do a lot of crazy things when they don't want you there, and after 2 terms, I was not there. I tried to come back, but it's very difficult in New York State. Don't forget, New York State's a welfare state like California. If you're a fiscal conservative like me, and you want to work hard for everything, and you want to save, serve, you don't want to sit there and wait for a check, this is a very tough state to get elected in. That's why I didn't win the Senate. I won all the primaries last year, and thank you for helping me, but you need a lot of money to become a senator in this state, because the people are looking for entitlements. And the Democratic Party some way, has given them what they want, and that's why they get elected. So I hope this is not going to happen in the Balkans the way it's happening here. Now, I leave, and the best thing I did, I think, was convincing Lantos to come to Kosovo and then to Albania, because we challenged Ramiz Alia in Albania by saying, the Berlin Wall just came down last October, and you still have the wall of communism here in Albania. I think he was really shocked by this. But he was also very intimidated by Lantos because he knew he was the chairman of the Human Rights Commission, and the benefit from that trip, besides, I think, beginning the whole democratic action, because it was only a month later people started to run into the embassies, so they understood something was going on, was that getting that file from the communist archives that showed all the Jews that were saved by Albanians. No one had known that for 45 years. Lantos gave it to me. I sent it to Israel, to my friend Eli Streit, and you now know that 67 Albanian families have been recognized by Israel as righteous among nations. There should be hundreds, maybe over 1,000, but the people who were witnesses died over 45 years in World War II, and you need to have the witnesses to do that. And they don't make the exceptions, but we're still working on a couple. I can go on and on. You'll hear the story when we write it about all the major things that Shirley and I did. I met Shirley, again, by accident. Imagine, I become a congressman by accident. I meet Shirley by accident, totally at a meeting where she was not supposed to be and I was supposed to be, but we got together and I found out that she was a publisher writing a book about Yugoslavia's ethnic nightmare. She had brought together the writers from Croatia and Bosnia and even Serbia to write anti-Milosevic. And it was good. But I thought it needed a lot more Albanian in there, and I finally convinced her to change Kosovo to Kosova in the book. And that drove a lot of people crazy, but she did it. But that was the beginning of a new partnership. 1993. She then started working very hard. She didn't leave her job. She was involved in the first the publishing company, then the criminal justice system. But she worked on the side with me to make sure that we did those hearings she talked about, took trips with me to Turkey. We tried to lobby for Bosnia and Kosovo in Turkey. We went there, did a press conference, then we went to the University of Marmara. There are a lot of things you probably don't remember that you're going to get when I finalize this book, so you can see the work that we did over all these years. Nothing happens by accident. But we created a wonderful foundation for the future of the Albanian nation. I didn't do this just for Albania. I did this for the Albanian people, and Shirley feels the same way. That is our nation, the Albanian people. 7 million living in the Balkans. It's a shame they were divided. Yes, I know Woodrow Wilson saved the state of Albania, but over 3 million Albanians were put in Yugoslavia, outside that state. And that's what created the whole problem. People don't realize that. So we have done a good job by bringing people there and by exposing it in Washington. You know that Montenegro's been tough. When I brought Lantos to Pristina in May of 1990, it wasn't a month passed by that Milosevic got the Parliament of Serbia to ban me from ever coming back to Kosovo, okay? Not only Kosovo, but Yugoslavia. Because I tried to go to Montenegro, and every time I tried, they always declined. They wouldn't let me in. And I'm a US citizen and a former congressman, but that's how much Montenegro was tied in with Serbia, that Milosevic could dictate that. So the first time I went back to Kosovo was after the war with Shirley, and that was September of 1999, as I recall. August, right. And we started putting up all the banners. Civic League said, independence for Kosovo now. We went all over. In fact, we had the big ones, and we put them on the Serbian signs all over Pristina, as much as we could, and we gave them out. Now, we also went to Macedonia in 1992. I monitored, and I brought the Wall Street Journal, Paul Weyrich with me, for the referendum on autonomy. We're still fighting that battle. Macedonia is an apartheid state. Albanians haven't integrated there. They certainly haven't been assimilated. Is the Ohrid Agreement now fully being implemented? No. There's going to be a census very shortly. And if for some reason they play games, we've already alerted the State Department about it, and they try to count the Albanians under 25%, that means the Oakwood Agreement, much of it's not going to apply. So we've already alerted the State Department. They better watch out how they use that census, because Albanians will not accept anything less than equal treatment in Macedonia or anywhere. Is that true? That's what we have to stand for now. Pure equality. Now, let me shift, because I could keep talking, but I'm going to shift to the subject you want to hear from me. About 10 years ago, I thought it was time to do something for the Albanians who were expelled from Greece, the Chams from Chambria. And I started to talk to people who knew more about it than me. I had heard people like Salih Balati and Ahmad Jaffo later, but in those days, Salih Balati was the one who seemed to be writing the most about it. And it's something I didn't know about. And I don't think even today, most Americans know about this issue. Because don't forget, Greece is a friend of the United States. It's in the European Union. It's in NATO. They have a very good lobby. I had to fight that lobby left and right because it was fronting for the Serbian lobby when I was a congressman and afterwards. I know who's there. I know they have a very qualified attorney. I know his name. That office basically is the lobby, and they pay him, someone said, over $1 million a year, just him, to be their lobby there. We don't spend that kind of money. You don't pay me and Shirley. We're volunteers. But we do need support if you want professionals to get involved with us. We have to hire public relations people. When we first got Ramos Haradini out of The Hague, you don't know what we had to do. We had to not only go to The Hague, we had to go to the UK. We had to do press conferences. We hired a public relations firm that cost us over $100,000. People don't know it. I had to beg, borrow, and you name it, from people to get that money. And we raised some of it in Kosovo from business people who wanted them back. And we got the right stories in the English press that got into The Hague, and the judges were reading it, and we brought the witness he needed from the UK, who was in Kosovo for 6 years, and that's what happened then. It didn't happen by accident. He's going to get out again, only because of the work Shirley's doing now. You don't know how she's talking today to the judges, not the judges, the attorneys over there, and the press and whatnot. And already things are now starting to turn his direction, because we want him back in Kosovo. Why? Because we support his party? No. We want the competition, but more than that, we want someone whose family suffered the way he did, as the head of the KLA, losing 2 brothers, I think another one in an accident. 3 brothers have died. And I've met his family. They are good Albanian patriots. Why not have him back? Okay? I don't hear any applause over there. Why? I think Mr. Tachi needs some competition. He's already got it from one of the people that decided to give up a lot here. He's here with us, former Krasniqi, stand up. He's a member of the parliament in Kosovo, right? But we need to go back now, because 10 years ago, I started thinking about that. Shirley and I started to write some stuff down, and we did come up with a resolution. It was about 4 pages on what went on for the Chams, just like we did to Chams. Just like we did, we were the ones to put in the first resolution for the independence of Kosovo on February 5th, 1992. 1992, think about it. And every 2 years after that, we put that resolution, because every time you have a new Congress, you have to reintroduce it. But that was introduced by Tom Lantos and Ben Gilman in 1992. And it was 4 pages. And if you read it, it's beautiful, because we had the help of Tom Lantos's Chief of Staff, Bob King, who came with us to Kosovo and Albania, and he was a PhD in Eastern European history, so he knew a lot about Kosovo. So that resolution is historic, and you're going to see it when we republish it. So why didn't that resolution on Chambria go anyplace? Well, you need to get congressmen to introduce it. That would have been easy. I could get 1 congressman to introduce it, but it goes nowhere. When I introduced the second resolution for Kosovo in 1987, the first was 1986, Joe Diaguardi in the House, Bob Dole in the Senate. The second one, the next Congress, was 1987. That was the 99th Congress. Then 1997 was the 100th Congress. I had 57 members of the House. Then they took it seriously, including some of the leaders. I couldn't do that with Chamria because we had raised money for a lot of those congressmen. Many of you came to Washington and helped me raise that money. In some cases, we came up here. We had Senator Pell, we had Senator Biden, we had Democrats and Republicans. But I couldn't get people to understand that we had to raise money in order to get this resolution in. And if you put a resolution in prematurely and you tell the other side what you're asking for and it doesn't go forward, then they know how to work against you because you gave them the roadmap. So we've never taken out that resolution yet. We still have it. And it doesn't have to change much. I think now's the time that we have to, relations firms working with us, and we put those stories in, you see how fast Greece would change. But we're the ones who know it. The Albanian community, not the Americans and not the world. So one of the things I decided to do, and I'll conclude with this, you haven't seen this yet. It's a letter that I was persuaded to send by a chum, a very educated one, by the way, who's now living in Washington with his wife, who's an attorney. And he said, Joe, and he's always on the internet, he says, Joe, do you realize that next week the Greek foreign minister, Lamberides, I think his name is going with the Italian foreign minister to Albania? I said, this is not right. Why do the Italians need to put a clean face on the Greeks? They are not doing anything good for the Albanian people. And I said, well, help me do some research. Help me put together, what do you want me to do? He said, I think you need to send a letter to our ambassador in Tirana, and you need to send a letter to the Italian foreign minister, and the Italian prime minister, not foreign minister, and the Greek foreign minister. No, not the foreign minister, they went there, to the prime ministers. And I said to myself, this is not right for me as a US citizen. I know I can challenge foreign policy in Washington, but for me to challenge countries who are dealing with each other is not appropriate. But I started thinking about it, and I said, the Italians know me a lot, especially the people in the council here. I didn't meet the new Italian ambassador to the US in Washington, but I said to myself, if I send him this letter with a copy to the council, they know who I am as an Italian American, and tell them about my Albanian roots, and tell them why this was not right to do, but I'll do it the day they go because I don't want them to think I'm trying to prevent it. That's not for me. They made a decision, let them go. But I wanted to educate the country of Italy about how bad Greece has been to the Albanian people and why the Italian people should not be letting Greece use them to look good. And I'd like to read you part of it, okay? It's in English. I'm having it translated to Albanian, and then we'll make it public. And I sent this to Ambassador Terzi on September 12th. That was the day that the two foreign ministers went to Albania. It said, Dear Ambassador Terzi, I'm writing in my capacity as a former member of the U.S. Congress, and I use my congressional stationery, not civically or anything. I'm still able to use that. Having represented Westchester County, New York, in the House of Representatives from 85 to 89, my district included many Italian-American and Albanian-American constituents. I'm also the founder of the Albanian-American Civic League, a nonprofit organization, volunteer lobby for the Albanian people that promotes their human rights and political freedom, all Albanians in Southeast Europe. My father, Giuseppe, his birth certificate said Giuseppe, right? My father, Giuseppe Dioguardi, immigrated to the United States with his mother and sisters in 1929 from a small Albanian and Italian-speaking village called Greci, which is located in the province of Avellino, not far from Naples. This is one of the 51 Albanian-speaking villages today, by the way. Can't say too much in here, but one day we're going to have a meeting. I'm going to give them the book that tells them the whole history of the operation in Italy. I think even the Italians have forgot that. But believe it or not, Italy pays for, you take my father's town, Greci, up to the 8th grade, they pay for the Albanian language to be taught from the 1st to the 8th grade. That's how good Italy has been. Okay? Think about Greece. Try to get, Albanian language, even though in Himara, which is what I said here, they allow the Greek language, we can't get it in Greece. These double standards have to change. So, I said, in Avellino, in Naples, and I said the inhabitants of Greci are part of the Albanian Abresh minority in Italy. Excuse me, descended from the Albanian army of George Castriati, also known as Skanderbeg, that provided military assistance to the King of Naples in 1461 to defeat the invading French. I wanted to make sure he knew the Albanian contribution to keeping Italy as Italy and not France. I understand that Italian Foreign Minister Franco Frattini is visiting Tirana today in the company of Greek Foreign Minister Stavros Lambrinidis to encourage, quote, to encourage political actors in Albania to work together for European integration of Albania. Very nice. Close quote. While it is not my place to challenge the foreign policies and diplomatic actions of countries other than the United States, I'm a citizen here. I can challenge anything I want. I wanted you and your government to know that I am disappointed about this joint visit because it seems to benefit the Greek nationalistic agenda in Albania rather than the EU integration agenda. In other words, they say they're going for one reason, but they went for another reason. All right? I think we can agree, Mr. Ambassador, in spite of our current economic problems, Greece is an important ally of both the United States and Italy as a member of NATO and the European Union. And it remains a significant regional, political, and economic actor in Southeast Europe. That economic doesn't look too good today, but I had to say it. Nevertheless, I am concerned that some important aspects of Greece's foreign policy work against European integration in the region, and I put dots. I'm going to tell you what they are, because this has to go on the record. I hope these people here in the press are good enough not to be censored, not to be bought, and tell the whole story. Because one of the problems we have is that the Berisha government is allowing a lot of this to happen. With the census that's going on, with the money that's being spent right now, and yet we don't hear the pressure being put on Greece. Am I right? All right, let them hear it. So, one, Greece is undertaking an unprecedented diplomatic campaign to advance her nationalistic program in Albania. And it includes the following. One, Greece to this day refuses to recognize the human rights of the ethnic Albanian Chamorrian minority in Greece. As you may know, this minority is composed of Chamorrians of the Orthodox religion who live in northwestern Greece, as well as the Chamorrians of the Islamic faith, who were subjected to terrible massacres, atrocities, and human rights abuses at the end of World War II, and they were forced to find life-saving refuge in Albania. One. Number two, Greece has still not formally abolished the state of war law with Albania, which was instituted in 1940 when Mussolini's army occupied Albania. Can you imagine in this day and age? Three, Greece has pressed Albania to approve 2 cemeteries in southern Albania dedicated to Greek soldiers who perished during the Italian-Greek War of 1940 and 41. While Italy, long ago, returned and buried her own soldiers on Italian soil. All right? You gotta know this. 4, Foreign Minister Lambrinidis, during his visit to Pristina, just before this other visit, reiterated his government's refusal to recognize the Republic of Kosovo. He also issued a thinly veiled warning to the Albanian government in Tirana to ignore the Constitutional Court of Albania's ruling, which threw out the Greek-Albanian agreement on the delimitation of the continental shelf in the Ionian Sea as a violation of the Albanian Constitution and the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. Now people don't know this, but here is the Greek government telling the government of Albania, you know, watch out because we don't want to see that changed. It's the advantage of Greece, isn't it? All right, we got it. This is why we need a lobby. This is why we need public relations. This is why we need your support. This is why you got to go to families all over this country who are Albanian. This has got to get on the record. Not enough for me to give a speech in Congress. I could put this on the record tomorrow. Dana Rohrabacher would probably publish this. But then what? It's finished. You've got to work like we did for the Republic of Kosovo. Many years with a strategy, step by step. Gur bahat mor bahat kalaya. Kalaya bahat. Kosovo Republik and Kumta Shipta. Kumta Shipta. 5. In spite of its unprecedented financial crisis, Greece continues to give money to language schools in Korça and Himara in southern Albania, and to pay retirement benefits and pensions to Albanian citizens who opportunistically declare themselves as Greek. In other words, they're being born. All right? You should also know that Greece is pressing Albania to conduct a census of ethnic minorities based on subjective criteria, in violation of the European Framework Convention on National Minorities, while Greece still refuses to identify her own national minorities and to ratify the Convention on National Minorities. In this connection, Greece's Consul General in Korça, earlier this year, this is the guy that's in Albania, Korça, from Greece, declared openly that Albania's Vlachs are in fact Greeks and should be counted as Greeks. Furthermore, the Consul General from Korça said that the census would be only the beginning of further steps towards the implementation of the, quote, Northern Ypres Agenda, close quote. The term Greek nationalists used to describe their aims in southern Albania, mainly trying to take southern Albania and make it part of northern Greece, which is never going to happen, but they're going to try everything for autonomy, and Greece is pushing for that. Just like the Serbs are trying to push that in northern Kosovo, and they're not going to get it. After 20 years of our work, you can be sure there's going to be no partition of Kosovo over my dead body, and Shirley's, Dana Rohrabacher's, and many others. But that doesn't mean we stay here and it's going to be happening. No, we got to make sure we publish a lot. Shirley just published an article that's going to be signed by a very powerful congressman in the next couple of days in the American press, just on that issue. So in conclusion, I feel strongly that the joint visit of the foreign ministers Frattini and Lambrinidis to Tirana serves Greece's regional agenda, not Italy's, at this important time of desired European integration. Greece needs to address the existence and marginalized status of its own ethnic minorities, reverse its anti-European policies against Albania and Macedonia, recognize the Republic of Kosovo, and commence affirmative action policies towards the Chamrian minority and other ethnic minorities in Greece. Only then, in my opinion, should Italy attach her immense goodwill in southeastern Europe and the affairs there to any Greek diplomatic initiative in Albania. Sincerely, Joe Diaguardi, and I sent a copy to Congresswoman Ileana Ross-Lane. All right? I put myself on the line. I'm sure a lot of people are now going to be very mad when this letter comes out public. The Greek lobby is not weak, but we have the truth. When you have the truth, you should not be afraid. You should declare it. You should put the sunlight on it. All the truth needs is to be shown, and then it grows faster than a tree. But if we're afraid to tell the truth, if we think someone is going to hurt my family or me if I tell the truth, that spreads. And before you know it, nobody wants to speak. But if we all stand up, then no one can stop the truth, and no one can stop the progress Albanians need to be one of the most powerful nations in Europe today. Why do I say that? Because they are born entrepreneurs. You drop Albanians anywhere, they know how to start a business. They know how to get a job. They know how to make things happen. Europe needs that. Look at Greece today. I heard this morning, makes you sick. The railroad is nationalized in Greece. Guess what the revenue, this is the gross, not the net. The gross revenue is from that railroad every year, 100 million euros. Guess what the salaries are? 400 million euros. Why? It's a dumping ground for all the politicians to put their family, their friends, and they can retire at 55. And they want to now demonstrate against Europe is not giving them enough money. Now, I know Albanians are not like that. They want, obviously, justice. They want to be compensated. I think that the Albanians under the Hoxha regime, to go a step further than Shirley, should be compensated. There should be reparations to people who spent time in jail. We've done it before, and we should do it again. But more than that, we need to recognize those families that suffered for 45 years, and that's the work that Shirley is doing, and you'll be happy to know that she's got some things she's working on right now that are going to be published about the Spach prison, about a lot of things, because until we shine a light on what Albanians did to Albanians for 45 years, there'll never be peace in Albania. You'll always have this tension.
What communism?
Yeah. Yeah, the communists did. Well, what am I saying for 45 years? With the Communist Party, weren't they Albanians? They were. So the Communist Party did against other Albanians. With that, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much, Mucci, Zach, McCellum, and Shirley, for all the hard work she's doing. Mira Pace.
Ju falenderojmë të gjithë për pjesëmarrjen në këtë ceremoni shumë kuptiplote dhe do të falenderoj personalisht sot mysafiri nga Kosova, anëtarën e parlamentit, Florin Krasniqin, për pjesëmarrjen e tij. Organizë zoti Zet Ballaj.
Më falni 1 minutë, 2 minuta, para se t'ju tregoj një surprise. Besoj se duhet të jetë surprise për neve. Është shumë diskutue. Në ligë jemi ka një ndërsi shumë gjanë. Nuk do me thonë se tona janë e pëlqehemi. Kemi secili mendimet tona, drejtimet tona, pjesa dërmuese që ka u folë këtu prej musafirëve të nderuam, Shirleyt e djeguar edhe zotit Djeguardi. Ka koha, është koha dhe më thonë që na, si thash edhe pare, dishojmë me kritikue të këqijat e me i lavdruet mirat. Shqipëria ka hecë për para, ka ba punë të mëdhaja, por ka lanë edhe shumë gjana pa bame. Ka ba dhe disa gafa që na mund të quajmë, edhe nuk i përdorim, nuk dëshojmë të i përdorim. Miku jam, që mund të konsideroj mik, që kom takue, kom pi kafe me ta, rasisht në publik, kryeministri sot, ka bon shumë punë, por edhe disa herë, nështë te i kalën disa gjana, ose i bën të lëshush me disa gjana, si ju përmenden edhe këtu. Për shembull, ne jemi kanë kundra mënyrës regjistrimit popullsisë në Shqipëri, me ndikimin e disa gjanave të Greqisë aty. Prandaj ne i kemi kërkojmë, i thomi mikut dashamirit, jo me përdor fjalë që s'ka nevojë me përdor. Janë disa njerëz që kanë dalë kundra, përdorin ata si për shembull ajo shoqata kuqezi. Nuk duhet për kryeministrin me thonë ajo kuqezi ose ajo faqezi është pak e tepruar prej atyne. Duhet me konë pak më të rezervuar. Por për shumë gjana, dhe me thonë, nuk ja u mohojmë, e shofim edhe dim në ligë, dim shumë mirë diferencën mes dy partinave të mëdhaja, që me të vërtet deri tash ka arë koha që e kanë kap për fyti, do më thonë të javë zvogluet, marrën e të frymës e demokracisë në përgjithësi, që duhet të lejohet trivet. Kemi njerëz pyjdal me njerëz karizmatik, menqër, punëtor, vyshëm, si për shembull Lulzim Basha, që do të besoj si do të shifet, duhet këta të fillojnë me lëshue vend ka pak e ta marrin të rit në dorë që janë për kohën. Pra, nuk po ju maj shumë për ta, kjo surpriza se Dioguarin nuk e harroj kur artikullin e Ilirije Buqpapaj, mos u gabosha, e shkrou në gazetën Bota Sot, fill mas përfundimit të votimeve këtu për senat në mi, edhe me një artikull të madhe, tha, Dioguardi fitoj, shqiptarët humben. Edhe kjo ishte arsyeja sepse ne, shqiptarët, jam i bindur se mund shëmta ndihmojmë financiarisht, besoj si ka pas mundësi që ta fituke garen. Por 12 milion që kundra 2-3 milion që ishte një luft e pa fitushme. Edhe si e përmendje edhe vetë, dhe më thonë t'jesh këtu në një shtetë që është 3-4 me 1 në parti demokratike republikane. Pra, ishte e vështirë. Por, sot një surprise që kemi një shok, një bashkëdhetar tonin, një banus i shtetit afër më këtu, që i përdorin gjithmonë New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, e kemi një bashkëdhetar, Petrit Lumajn, që nuk e ka hapë kandidaturën hala, por unë muj lirisht me lejen e ti, me thonë si mrenda një kohë shumë shkurt, do të hapin kandidaturën për United States Senate në Connecticut, më thonë si është edhe banusi Connecticut, edhe në tash që më besoj se do të ketë nevojë për krahjen tonë morale, sparit, natyrisht, edhe materiale. Ashtu sa mujmë si të mujmë. Pra, besoj se na t'i dishrojmë një punë të marë, edhe t'i dishrojmë sukses, me gjithë sa është rrugë pak e gjatë, të ka me shkuar prajmen e tjerë. Besoj se do të shkojnë punë për smari. Edhe këtu kjo distrikti i kongresit i Namti, në mëmajtja sa është, nuk e besu ke kur se do të fitojnë republikani, po e fitoj. So, veç t'jesh shpresën edhe do hecish për para. A dhe pra dhe njëherë, ju faleminderit për ardhje, për pjesëmarrje, ka që pe përfundojmë tunë Gjerdet Vukaj, të shroj ta falenderoj nga zemra, për me dhe për jështë që nga ka bërë mos në venin, edhe ka pregadit pak ushqime, pak pije, për kasoje, kështu komas, e të njifimi të takomi, kështu përsafërmi, edhe mos pritoni, se normalisht nuk mund të shërbej, por vetë shërbej.
Cheese. Cheese.
Mendimin e Joe Dioguardit dhe ne nuk merrem me politikë, merrem thjesht me komunitetin shqiptar, jemi patriot shqiptar që jetojmë këtu në diasporë në Amerikë. Duam një Shqipëri të bashkuar, një Shqipëri etnike, siç është ajo e harta aty. Dhe Dioguardin e kemi ndihmësin tonë, na ndihmon për organizuar evente si çaparada, dhe organizata tjera me patriotike shqiptare dhe me 10 tetor këtë hanin ne do marrim pjesë në paradën e Kolumbusit, që presim paktën 2000 shqiptar, janë shqiptar që po vinë nga Connecticut, Chicago, Michigan, Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Kështu që ju ftojmë të gjithëve aty. Dhe këtë paradë, si mjet, ja dedikojmë qamërisë popullit qam. Si mjet edhe vitin që të vinë, kështu që bashkojmë gjithë për qamërinë, siç jemi bashkuar për Kosovën. Faleminderit.
And that's for their support.
And we need your contributions. Se na kushtojnë lek, ne jemi studenta, gjysa jemi pa punë, kështu që të lyp herë njëri jetë tjetër, kemi organizuar pak lek, po pas gjysën se kena gërmuar.
Tell them why. You need a float, and the float costs money. Tell them.
Kemi një float që po shpatë float nuk mund më shpjesh në këtë paradë, float bën $2,000, ne akoma se kemi bën $1,000, kështu që
And any amount is appreciated.
sa keni mundësi, $10, $5, sa keni mundësi.
Thank you.
Faleminderit.
The community about your activity. How do you feel today to take these awards?
Well, actually, you'd be surprised. We don't really get that many awards, and actually that's a good sign because it means that we're doing our job and so is the community. But this was special because the Albanian American Freedom House decided to create this award and to recognize everything that the Civic League has done from the time that Joe entered Congress 25 years ago and the time that I came along about 20 years ago. And to look at and to have a chance as a group to look back and reflect on what that's meant for the Albanian people. But because it was the Albanian American Freedom House, it was also a particular time to look at what was happening in the past, going forward in Albania. That really was supposed to be the focus of tonight. And I was frankly glad to have that opportunity, you know, to think back, because that's where my story to a certain extent began when I went to Congress to testify on behalf of Albania coming out of Enver Hoxha's communist regime in 1996. So it was a wonderful evening, and it's been, you know, very, very well organized, and it's been, you know, we've been shown great appreciation and warmth, and Joe and I are both very, very happy to be here.
Now the Albanian peoples haven't too many problems in origin, and how will you describe the situation right now in Kosovo and the other place in Albanians, in Balkan Peninsula?
I mentioned in my remarks that I wrote an article that you're called Albanians Stand at a Perilous Crossroads in February of this year, okay, and pretty soon it'll be a full year. And Albanians still stand at a perilous crossroads. That is the tragedy. We have Kosovo, where there is the threat of partition. We have Montenegro, where Albanians are still second, if not third-class citizens. We have Macedonia, where the Ohrid Agreement has never been realized. We have Albania, which is locked in a battle between two parties and has been for years. And throughout all of the region, we have politicians that, with only some exceptions, have decided to enrich themselves coming out of the former East Bloc rather than fulfilling the will of the people, rather than working for the common good. And it's a time when all of us need to think back to the survivors of the Hoxha era and what they tried to do in resistance. We need to look back at what the Kosovo Liberation Army did to try to drive out Slobodan Milosevic and finally bring an end to Slavic domination. And we have to look at each other and ask who is willing to continue to make the sacrifice on behalf of the resolution of the national cause. The Albanian world, as you know now, is too deeply fragmented in both the Balkans and in the diaspora.
Do you think it's enough what the international community is doing for the Kosovo and the United States right now?
Well, the international community, for the most part, isn't working on behalf of Kosovo, and there's a reason why. At least in the United States, we're fighting two wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, now Libya with the Arab Spring. So the focus of the world is not on Southeast Europe, and I always warn Albanian Americans, we cannot take the United States for granted. I warn Albanian leaders, we cannot take the United States for granted. The only way that the Albanian world is going to come forward again and be on the front burner is when we get together to tell the story and support those who know how to tell the story. In this case, the Albanian American Civic League has historically done the work in Washington, D.C. And there's some other people around the world who've also done the work. But without an orchestrated strategy on the part of people in Southeast Europe, Albanians there, and Albanians here, we will not succeed. So the time has come to understand that the only way to solve the problems are in the press and the parliament of the world. We can't sit back and assume the United States will be there for us. They will not be unless we once again make the case.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for your awards.
Thank you very much. Faleminderit.
Feel it you today to take these awards.
You know, it's always good to be recognized by the Albanian people who live here in America, but they come from Albania. A lot of people here tonight. They suffered a lot. And I felt very good to be here with Shirley, to be honored for the work that we have done for all the Albanian people, but the work's not finished. We need to do more to expose what happened to the Albanian people under the communist regime of Enver Hoxha. And that's why I was happy when Muchi Jepa called me to say that he wanted to use this opportunity to talk about the work that Shirley's now doing to expose what happened at prisons like Spach and working with people like Pelham Lamai about who was in that jail. And then for me to talk about the issue of Greece, because Greece does not recognize the Chamrian, the Chamrian minority there, and we need to change that. Greece is a member, as I said, of NATO, the United Nations, and the European Union, and yet they are not adhering to the human rights conventions that they signed. So it's time to make this public, time to bring the light on these issues, to let the American public know and the world know that Albanians need to be treated equally with all the others where they live, whether it's Macedonia, Montenegro, even in Serbia and Preševa, and in Greece. Kosovo and Albania are two full countries now. There, we need to make sure that we have real democracy. Albanian people obviously are the majority there, so we don't have to worry about minority rights, but those countries have to now make sure that their democracy is like the U.S. democracy.
The Albanian peoples today haven't too many problems. The big problems is the north of Kosovo.
Yeah.
How do you think about these problems?
To me, there should be no question that once Kosovo was recognized by the United States and now 83 other countries, there can be no changes in borders. Because once you open up that issue of borders, they're going to look to have other borders changed, whether it's Macedonia, whether it's Montenegro, whether it's Preševa. And believe me, Europe has to worry about the economy now, not about changing borders. And the whole meaning of Europe today is integration. So people have to think about living together and being integrated, not assimilated, integrated. We have to maintain our cultures and our traditions even in other countries, but we have to be respected as the majority is respected in that country.
How do you think go to be resolved the Kosovo problems right now?
I think the United States has made it clear that as far as they're concerned, there'll be no changes in the borders, and there has to be European integration. And I like what the Prime Minister of Germany said, told Mr. Tadic to his face, if you want to become a member of the European Union, you have to remove the parallel structures in Kosovo, and you have to recognize Kosovo the way it is today. My feeling is that Kosovo is not going to be changed, and if someone starts that discussion about change, they better be ready to give up, and it has to be the Albanian people that ask for this, all of Preševa back to Kosovo, if they're going to take those Serbian towns in the north and give them to Serbia. I'm not saying that's the answer, but Serbia cannot get something for nothing. My feeling is there are going to be no changes in borders.
Thank you very much, and congratulations for these awards.
Thank you very much, Bashir.
Zoti Krasniqi, ju jeni deputet i Parlamentit të Kosovës. Më para se të bashit deputet, ju jeni një aktivistët e këtij komuniteti. Si e vlerësoni aktivitetin e këtij komuniteti dhe darkën e sotshme që nderohet Joseph Dioguardi?
Mendoj se ky nderim për Joseph Dioguardin edhe Shirley Cloyce Dioguardin ishte shumë i qëllum për faktin se qeverit as në Kosovë, as në Shqipëni, asnjëherë nuk ju kanë vlerësu punën aq të madhe që ka bërë Liga dhe Joe Dioguardi në Shtetet e Bashkuara të Amerikës. Mos të harrojmë se Joe Dioguardi e ka fillu lobimin shqiptar edhe për tash më shumë se 22 vjet. Vazhdimisht ka punu për çështën shqiptare, edhe në kohën kur ishte në Kongres, për 4 vjet që ka shërbyer në Kongres, vazhdimisht e ka promovuar çështën shqiptare e qeverisë e Kosovës, as në Shqipëni, as në Maqedoni, as në Malzi, as kërkun trojet etnike, nuk e kanë vlerësuar kontributin dhe punën e Joe Dioguardi atë sa është dashur.
Sipas mendimit tim, ky vlerësim ishte i qelluar dhe ishte në vendin dhe në momentin e duhur?
Shumë i qëllum. Vërtet këta njerëz meritojnë shumë, jo vetëm për punën që kanë bën, janë të bën, po unë mendoj se edhe në të ardhmen në Joe Dioguardin e kemi një mik të mirë, një bashkëpunëtor të mirë, një njeri që njeh rrethanat politike në Ballkan, edhe njeh rrethanat politike edhe në Amerikë. Mendoj se edhe në të ardhmen Joe Dioguardi do të jap një kontribut të çmueshëm për çështjen e gjithë shqiptarëve, të filluar prej Çamërie në Kosovë, në Malzi, në Maqedoni, në luginën e Përshevës, në gjithë trojet etnike. Mendoj se na duhet shumë ndihmë Amerikës e Joe Dioguardi është njëri i duhur që me bën këtë ndihmë për popullin shqiptar.
Zoti Krasniqi, duke parë në këtë këndvështrimin që po thoni dhe ju, si e shihni sot diasporën ju dhe çfarë duhet bëjë diaspora për çështjen shqiptare dhe sidomos për çështjen e Kosovës?
Mendoj se ka një neglizhim shumë të madh në diasporë. Diaspora nuk është aq aktive sa ishte viteve të kaluara. Mendoj se ky disorganizim edhe ky dëshpërim i diasporës vjen si rezultat i korrupsionit shumë të thellë të politikanëve në Kosovë, në Shqipëri dhe në trojet etnike në përgjithësi. Mendoj se diaspora sheh politikën e Kosovës si njerëz që janë në politikë vetëm për fitime personale, për përfitime personale, patriotizmin e kanë lënë, e përdorin vetëm si maskë, si kamuflazh atëherë kur ju duhet, në kohën e votimeve, në kohën e zgjedhjeve, po vërtet mungon një patriotizëm edhe një dashuri e mirëfillt në gjithë spektrin politik kombëtar, në gjithë trojet etnike. Andaj diaspora ndihet si e shfrytzuar në këtë aspekt, andaj nuk ka një organizim mirëfillt në diasporë.
Nëse do të kërkoj një mesazh të lihet diasporës sot, cili do të ishte mesazhi që do t'i adresoheshe sot ju?
Mesazhi është shumë i qartë. Pa diasporën, e sidomos pa diasporën e Amerikës, nuk do të ndodhte Shqipënia mas konferencës paqes, nuk do të ndodhte bashkimi i trojeve etnike, nuk do të ndodhte liria e Kosovës, nuk do të ndodhin gjitha gjanat e mira që i kanë ndodhur popullit shqiptar në këtë shekull, edhe në shekullin e kaluar nuk do të kishin ndodhur. Edhe pse të mirat kanë qenë të pakta, të këqijat kanë qenë shumë më të shumta, gjithë mirat që i kanë ndodhur popullit tonë nuk do të ndodhishin pa aktivizimin edhe pa ndihmën edhe pa përpjekjet e diasporës në Amerikë.
Ju faleminderit.
Faleminderit.
Në ditën e Kolombit që mbahet në 10 tetor në Manhattan, komuniteti shqiptar do të përfaqësohet kësaj radhe nga një grup të rinj të cilët janë pjesë e organizatës Rrënjët Shqiptare ose Albanian Roots, të cilët do të jenë pjesëmarrës në këtë paradë, bashkangjitur me komunitetin italian i cili do të organizojë paradën e ditës së Kolombit. Një nga udhëheqësit e këtij grupi, ose dy nga kryesorët që janë udhëheqësit e Albanian Roots, janë Marko Kepi, Ervin Toro,
Dorian Nasto.
Zoti Kepi, si ndjeni ju dhe si jeni përgatitur ju për të marrë pjesë në këtë paradë?
Faleminderit për këtë intervistë. Ne ndjehemi shumë krenar, sepse jemi një organizatë e re, jemi një organizatë studentash, pra nuk kemi financim sa kanë disa organizata tjera shqiptare, por ne kemi pothuajse eventin më të madh që një komunitet shqiptar këtu në diasporë mund të bëjnë. Pra me 3 studenta ne mund të organizojmë një këtë paradë kaq madhështore që do kemi njerëz nga Philadelphia, Chicago, Michigan, Connecticut, New Jersey, që do mbledhen aty gjithë bashku që të flasim për patriotizmin tonë, për kënaqërinë tonë shqiptare dhe që të dedikojmë këtë paradë popullit çam.
Kjo është një rast Kjo është një rast i madh për neve sepse ne jemi gjithë studentë dhe kjo është që ne tregojmë kombit shqiptar që ne sado që jemi rrit në Amerikë, kjo është një prioritet që ne prap e kemi patriotizmin tonë. Ne duam të shkojmë që shqiptarët amerikanë të shkojnë, edhe që amerikanët të shkojnë, që ne rronjët tona akoma e majnë, dhe ne jemi shumë të kënaqur që jemi shqiptarë, duam gjithë tjerë që të shkojmë. So, është shumë important, ne kemi gjithë shkollat mbledh, Brew College, City College, Hunter College, Brooklyn College, kemi mbledh gjithë këto universitete që ka popullatare shumë shqiptarë që dhe të vinë gjithë, edhe me kombin shqiptarë që nuk janë vetëm të ri. So, për neve kjo është një kënaqësi e madhe që gjithë vinë kjo paradë.
Demonstrimi simbolik shqiptare në paradën e Kolumbos. Çfarë përvojson për ju dhe çfarë do të tregojë aty?
Është një radhë pas një kënaqësi e madhe për ne që bëjmë diçka të tillë. Është një krenari, do të them që populli shqiptar mblidhet në mes të New Yorkut dhe përfaqëson flamurin e tij shqiptar. Është një gjë shumë madhështore që na mbledhur shumë njerëz, janë futur gjithë ata njerëz në punë për këtë gjë. Edhe ne po mundom të kemi diçka shumë madhështore për publikun shqiptar, por edhe për publikun amerikan.
Motivimi i parë ishte sepse ne si komb shqiptar jemi shumë të përhapur. U shoh kombet e tjera si për shembull këtu në New York njerëz nga Izraeli janë shumë si komb janë të mbledhur shumë edhe thash me veten time pse jo ne, pse mos mblidhen shqiptarët të gjithë bashkë, të mblidhen me një paradë dhe përfaqësojnë Shqipërinë edhe të përfaqësojnë Shqipërinë etnike. Kam qejf që të jetë kosovarët janë këtu, çamët janë këtu, Shqipëria vetë jetë këtu të gjithë, të mblidhemi të gjithë në këtë paradë, edhe të jemi krenar për Shqipërinë etnike që ka qenë një çfarë kohe dhe besoj se një ditë të gjithë Shqipëria do jetë e bashkë përpashme.
Atëherë ju faleminderit shumë dhe ju urojmë suksese me datën 10 në pjesëmarrjen tuaj në paradën për ditën e Kolumbit. Urime, suksese. Ju jeni një organizatë e re dhe nderimi i parë që po bëni keni zgjedhur lobistin shqiptar dhe kryetarin e lobit shqiptar, Albanian American Civic League. Pse zgjodhët të dhe çfarë përfaqëson për ju Dioguardi?
Ja, është e vërtetë, kjo është një organizatë e re, e titulluar Shtëpia e Lirisë, është një organizatë kryesisht antikomuniste, është një organizatë që ka si qëllim në programin e saj të dënojë krimet e komunizmit, të nderojë figurat e shquara dhe të vlerësoj edhe ata që janë gjallë, sepse tashmë është bërë zakon që kur shqiptarët vdesin, atëherë shoqëria kujtohet për ata. Ç'është e vërteta, edhe pse ka kaluar 20 vjet nga rënia e murit të Berlinit, historiografia shqiptare qëndron në të njëjtat pozita, ashtu si kundër ishte në kohën e monizmit, pra në kohën e komunizmit. Ne filluam me zotin Dioguardi, sepse nëse do të hedhim syt, nëse do të bëjmë retrospektiv ngjarjeve për 3 dekada të tëra, ky njeri i madh i shqiptarëve ishte i vetmi njeri që më në fund hapi dyert e Washingtonit, aty ku Chelsea fitores, aty ku suksesi fitores. Dhe fal këtij njeriu do të vinin miq të tjerë të shqiptarëve, siç ishte Tom Lantos, Robert Dole, Engel e shumë miq të tjerë shqiptarë. Por ne detyrohemi shumë këtij shqiptari të madh.
Çfarë lidhje ka ky motivacion ose nderimi juaj që i bëni në Dioguardi ndërmjet punës që ka bërë ai për çështjen shqiptare dhe luftën antikomuniste?
Duke nderuar Dioguardin, ne nderuam dhe zonjë Shirley. Shirley Dioguardi ka shumë vlerë në komunitetin shqiptar, por dhe jashtë komunitetit shqiptar. Nuk duhet të përmend këtu meritat e saj, por ajo ka si një program, kuptohet, në lidhje me organizatën tonë, në bashkëpunim me organizatën tonë, të bëjmë ç'është mundur që të dënojmë krimet e komunizmit, të bëjmë ato të njohura historisë, të bëjmë ato të njohura popullit shqiptar dhe pothuajse gjithë botës. Dhe për këtë ne na duan miq, na duan personalitete, sepse në Shqipëri sot këto probleme ngrihen vetëm kur ka kohë fushatash. Qeveritë shqiptare, cila do që vinë, nuk ka interes i dënojë këto krime, sepse në krye janë po pjella slavo-komuniste, janë po ata, kështu që ata s'mund ta ndrojnë mentalitetin e tyre.
Zoti Lama, ju jeni një burgosur politik. Burgosur politik, shoqata dhe organizata ka edhe në Kosovë, edhe në Maqedoni, edhe në Malzi. Pra shqiptarët janë të të diskriminuar dhe të vuajtur në të dyja anët e kufirit. Si bashkëpunoni ju dhe si do t'ja vlerësoni ju punën e këtyre shoqatave dhe organizatave tjera?
Shiko, një organizat politike, një parti politike, madje edhe individ, është i fortë sa është i fortë buxheti i tij. Jo më kot në Shqipëri u zbatua Katovica me regjit të Ramizalis. Pra, ta të burgosur që dolën nga burgjet të sakatuar, të lodhur, të shkatruar, ta nuk patën mundësi të jetojnë, nuk patën një strem mbi kokë. Nuk u duan shpërblyen. Kriminalet, klasa politike nuk kërkojnë falje për gjithë krime që kryen për 50 vjet. Kështu që s'mund të flasësh për një forcë të këtyre grupeve. Të mos harrojmë se shumica ishin pleq dhe gjysmë e tyre vdiqën. Unë që jam gjenerata më e re që shkova në burg 18 vjeç, edhe unë sot jam 53 vjeç. Kështu që është e pamundur që të kërkosh një bashkim të tyre shoqatave.
Po kur do të kthehet dinjiteti këtyre njerëzve në vend, si në Shqipëri, Kosovë, Maqedoni, Maqedoni, kudo?
Shiko,
dinjiteti të burgosave politik.
Nëse do të hidhim një sy gjithë historisë tonë kombëtare, ta fillojmë që nga lidhja e Prizrenit, ku ne lidhëm si klasë politike, edhe më vonë, shumica e patriotëve, shumica e gjithë atyre që e bën Shqipërinë, ose u burgosën, ose u ekzekutuan, ose morën rrugët e botës. Kjo është shumë ironike, por është më shumë tragjike, do të thoshja unë. Pra, kush e mbjell nuk e korr. Është me të vërtet fatkeqësi kur shikoj sot ndërgjegjen e komit, qendrestarët të enden në rrugëve me xhepat bosh, me sy drejt qiellit, duke parë çdo ditë përsekutorët e tyre me makinat luksoze, me pallatet e tyre. Madje edhe këtu në Amerikë është ironike kur një burgosur, ish i burgosur, që ka dashur të kaloj kufirin, është plagosur, ka pasur në statun e lirisë, kërkon të vinë në Amerikë, nuk vin dot sepse ambasada amerikane është mbushur me komunista dhe bikomunistësh. Kjo është e patolerueshme. Prandaj ne po fillojmë këtu nga New Yorku, nga Washingtoni, këtë aksion, këtë nisëm të tillë, nuk është thjesht dinjiteti jonë, po është historia. Dhe në fund të fundit ne kemi histori, sepse të parët tanë kanë bërë historinë. Nëse ata birbo që sot janë në pushtet, ata nuk kanë histori. Ata i ka pur koha dhe ata në pelivan. Ata derdhjet tundëm flamurin e Bashkimit Sovjetik, sot tundi flamurin amerikan për interesat e tyre të ulta. Ata barkun e kanë këtu në Amerikë, shpirtin e kanë përsëri në Moskë.
Ju faleminderit. Për News TV ishte Pëllum Lama, ishi burgosur politik në kampet dhe burgjet e Shqipërisë.
Thank you.